Want to make your writing more conversational and more enjoyable to read for your audience? Then this is the perfect video for you because I'm going to show you 5 super easy tips to make your writing really come alive and make your audience feel like a friend is talking to them rather than a robot. I'm also going to show you 5 real websites that do an amazing job in conversational messaging. And I'm going to drop 3 ChatGPT prompts at the end of this video that you can apply to your existing work or your future projects to really make your writing come alive and give it that conversational vibe. That's right, you can use a robot to sound less like a robot. Sound good? Let's get started. All right, so before we get into the tips, let's talk about why conversational messaging really works, why it's so powerful. Conversational messaging works because it brings your readers into a real dynamic conversation. So it doesn't feel like you're talking at them, it feels like you're talking with them. There's actually science that shows that humans respond best to those that look, act, and sound like them. So by speaking conversationally, you're showing that you actually get your target audience. Our brains release a chemical called oxytocin when we engage in conversation, the same chemical that's responsible for building social bonds and trust. So by working conversational messaging into your work, you're creating a memorable experience like they're talking to an actual person, and you're making your content much more enjoyable to read. So let's dive into 5 easy techniques to do that. Conversational writing tip number 1 is to write in the first person. Think about it. When you talk every day or you're talking with a friend in conversation, you're talking in the first person. You're using pronouns like you and your and we and our. You're not talking in the third person unless you're really weird. You're always talking in the first person. So tip number 1 is to write in the first person. It's going to make your messaging more direct, more personal, and much more clear to understand. Conversational writing tip number 2 is to write in the active voice, not the passive voice. When you write in an active voice, you are making your messaging much more clear and much more direct. When you write in a passive voice, your sentences become longer and more difficult to understand. For example, you wouldn't say your conversion rates will be raised by up to 200%. You would just say raise your conversion rates by 200%. An easy way to do this is to start with a strong action word to create an action-oriented sentence. So I'm not going to get into grammar so much in this video, but if you want some examples of active versus passive voice, go do a quick search online. There's a ton of resources out there for you. So tip number 2 is to write in the active voice. Conversational writing tip number 3 is to ask questions. Think about it. When you're in everyday conversation, you're asking questions and you're being asked questions. So by asking a question, you're causing your audience to actually stop and think critically for a moment, which is really powerful because if you're asking the right questions, most likely they're going to agree with you. They're going to say, yes, that's me, or yes, I really do want that. And by getting them to say yes now, they're more likely to say yes later on once they get to the call to action or they get to your offer. So tip number 3 for conversational writing is to ask questions. Conversational writing tip number 4 is to use contractions. When you talk in everyday conversation, you are using contractions all the time. You're not saying I should not, or I would not, or is not. You're saying shouldn't and wouldn't and isn't. So you should also use contractions in your messaging. When you use contractions, you're making your copy more casual and more informal in tone. And not only does this make it more conversational, but it also shortens your word count, which is incredibly important for copywriters because we have such few seconds to capture attention. So tip number 4 is to use contractions in your copy. Conversational writing tip number 5 is to bring in that personality. When you talk to everyday people, the words that they use and the tone they use reveal their personality. What is your brand like? Is it humorous? Is it serious? Is it playful? Look for opportunities to interject that into your copy wherever possible. By injecting personality, you're making your messaging much more human and much more memorable, and you're showing who your brand really is to your customers. Step number 5 is to bring in that brand personality with word choice and tone. All right, so now let's talk about the fun stuff. You can use AI to make your writing more conversational. Here are 3 super simple ChatGPT prompts that you can use today to really make your messaging more human, more casual, more informal. Now, remember, when you're using an AI tool, the first results aren't always the best. Often you want to prompt and reprompt to get the output to what you want. So please feel free to modify these Also, I'm going to drop them in the video description below so you can grab them and start using them today. All right, so that wraps up 5 super easy tips for conversational writing. Remember, the power of conversational copywriting is that it brings your reader into an actual conversation, so it feels like a friend, someone who understands them, is talking with them rather than at them. And the easiest ways to do this is number 1, write in the first person. Number 2, use an active voice. Number 3, ask them questions. Number 4, use contractions. And number 5, bring in that brand personality. If you like today's video, give me a like, give me a subscribe. I have more good stuff coming for you guys. And if there is a writing technique that I did not cover for conversational copy that you use, I would love to hear it in the comments below. I'll see you guys next time. Happy writing.